Hello, I'm your host, Brian Callanan. City leaders are responding to new concerns about gun violence and prostitution on Aurora Avenue North by shutting down streets and potentially adding a new city attorney to focus on the area. How is this plan working? Plus, what's next for Ballard after a light rail extension promised to that neighborhood has been put on hold? I'm talking with Council members Bob Kettle and Dan Strauss about these questions and the ones you're sending in too. That's next on City Inside Out, Council Edition.
And we have to do this for the communities, not just North Aurora, by the way. The gun violence impacts Rainier Beach, it impacts the CID.
You must put out a date for Ballard, no matter what it is or how bad it is. And I'm telling you, their ideas are very bad right now.
All that and more coming up next on City Inside Out, Council Edition. Welcome once again to City Inside Out Council Edition, right here on the Seattle channel. Brian Callanan here with you, and with me are two guests. I have Councilmember Dan Strauss representing District 6, which reaches out from Magnolia, goes through Ballard out to Green Lake 2. Councilmember Strauss chairs the Council's Finance, Native Communities, and Tribal Governments Committee. Councilmember, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
We also have with us Councilmember Bob Kettle, who represents District 7, also from Magnolia into downtown. He also chairs the Council's Public Safety Committee. Councilmember Kettle, good to see you too.
Thank you for having me.
Councilmember Strauss, I'm going to start with you here because there's a lot of World Cup excitement coming to Seattle right now. You got a big viewing party, pride celebration coming to your district in late June. A lot of excitement over Norway. The Scandinavian roots of Ballard are showing there. Sounds like a big celebration. I was trying to ask at a district level first. Is your district ready for what sounds like, well, it is a pretty big World Cup party going on right now?
Oh, we've been ready. We're excited for the two watch parties. There's one this Friday for the USA-Australia game in Ballard Commons Park, and then we will have the watch party on the 26th as well, where we're going to close down the streets, bring in a huge TV. And I'll also say, you know, Councilmember Kettle and I we've reached a disagreement recently about Interbay. I'm calling it the disputed territory.
Oh, dear.
Because we have Ballard FC and Salmon Bay FC playing at
the semi-pro clubs,
and you know, as well as I have a great love of Smith Cove Park and all these other things. Councilmember Kettle hosts office hours in Magnolia. It's a fun dispute.
Okay.
But I say that because Ballard has had a youth soccer club since 1975.
Yeah.
That means that there are 5 generations of soccer fans and players in our area, which is what makes the Ballard FC, Salmon Bay FC excitement so electric. And that has contributed directly to the excitement that we're going to see at Ballard Commons Park this Friday and in they call it, you know, Ballard Avenue, where old Ballard City Hall was. That's where we're going to, just like Seafood Fest, instead of having a stage, we're shutting down the street to put in a big TV. It's going to be a blast. I hope everyone can come out.
Thank you for that. And I want to go past the excitement just a titch, if I could. Councilmember Kettle, I want to talk about your district, which includes downtown, really the epicenter of what's going on with World Cup here. You had some disagreements with the mayor over whether surveillance cameras should be used around the stadiums as a public safety measure. After a briefing with the FBI and the Seattle Police, the mayor said she believed there were general and credible threats. That was the phrase she used to describe what was going on with public safety. So she said she's going to turn these cameras on. So I'm just trying to bottom line this for our viewers, if we could. Should people go downtown if there are general and credible threats to public safety? What's the message you're trying to get across here?
Yes, they should go downtown. We put all these pieces in play. You know, the last piece that was missing was turning those cameras on. And because of that, I think we have great coverage. We have a lot of jurisdictions, federal, state, local, that are working together and to create a safe games set of matches for the World Cup. And I think we're ready. I'm looking to get tickets myself. I know that's hard. But it's not just around the stadiums, by the way. It's like Westlake Park, Pacific Place, which is getting reimagined.
There's viewing parties all over the place.
Pacific Place has been reimagined as, you know, like Soccer Central, and so we have all these places. The waterfront, of course. I was down there as it started, the World Cup. It was beautiful. It was electric on the waterfront. It was unbelievable. And so I think we're in a good place, and being ready for from a public safety perspective too.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Kettle. I want to stay with you, and I want to keep talking talking about public safety if we could. Let's talk about gun violence, prostitution on Aurora Avenue North. Those issues have been present there for years. Shots fired in the North Seattle area are actually down compared to last year, but there was a spike in gun violence in May, some high visibility shootings that led residents there to organize a protest, and the city has responded. The mayor has authorized shutting some streets down, adding more police to patrol the area. What impact is this new focus on Aurora Avenue going to have? Because you mentioned at a recent press conference you weren't overly confident that the city's response would work. Help us out here.
Well, that lack of confidence comes from what we've been seeing over the years. You know, we have like a little spurt of activity, and then we kind of fall back. You know, then we have a spurt of activity, and we kind of fall back. And so we have to have engaged with leadership with follow-up and follow-through. And we have to do this for the communities, not just North Aurora, by the way. The gun violence impacts Rainier Beach, it impacts the CID. The factors that impact North Aurora also are present throughout downtown, Belltown, even in Ballard and other locations, Lake City, around the city. And we have to keep the focus on what we're doing in terms of public safety. And a lot of this is having compassion, but then also the accountability piece. And that's what's not been missing, like on North Aurora. And it's unfortunate because we pass a bill, the implementation, the follow-up, follow-through, it's not there, or working with partnership with other entities, the state and the county. You have to have sustained efforts in order to be successful.
Is there something in particular that you can focus on in terms of we need to get this right, we need to follow through on this piece? Anything you have your eye on there?
Well, it's about having capacity. Because this is a tricky area, and there's a lot of dynamics. And because part of this is I focus on the men, as I call the demand signal, but on the women's side, you have older women, but you have these minors, these young women, and it's like, hey, we can't have this. And so we have to have this kind of effort. But to do this, you kind of have to have detectives. You have to have these specialty units. Yeah. And they got depleted when everybody was thrown on patrol.
And you're saying capacity. You're talking about more officers.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
And so we need to reach these, larger number of officers. I'm talking about 1258. I recognize in the budget there's some other numbers too. Yeah. But if we do that, then we could fill those units up, and then we could be more proactive. And we need to be on our toes, not on our heels, and that allows us to be on our toes on North Aurora.
Thank you for that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about police hiring later in the show. I appreciate you bringing that up. Councilmember Strauss, I want to draw you in here with a question that speaks to public safety and the budget, which you oversee as the Finance Committee Chair. City Attorney Evans said at the same press conference here she wants a new prosecutor to focus on Aurora Avenue who would use ERPOs, extreme risk protection orders, to take guns away from sex traffickers or pimps.
The ERPA prosecutor that we've asked for is going to help keep our communities safe from gun violence. If you are out threatening violence in our community, we will use our ERPA prosecutor to take your gun away.
So usually this kind of protection order is used in domestic violence cases. I'm going to put that to the side for a second. I just wanted to ask, can the city afford to make a new investment like this with a budget deficit that you well know is north of $170 million?
We can't afford to not make this investment. This is critical that we make this investment. Something that I really appreciate about Councilmember Juarez is her dedication to fixing the problems that we see on North Aurora. I mentioned at the press conference I lived at Motor Place in Aurora. I lived half a block from Aurora just after they closed down the Thunderbird Motel when these issues extended all the way down to the Ship Canal Bridge. As we've seen, and when I took office, these issues were occurring as far south as 83rd. The motel at 83rd and the motel at 87th had the nuisance orders put forward on them. And so you see us continuing to bite away at addressing this issue. What I really appreciated at the press conference is that we had multiple levels of government. We had the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, we had the city attorney, we had council members, we had
Department of Transportation,
the mayor showed up as well. And something that City Attorney Evans said very clearly was, and I appreciated, which is if you are shooting guns in our streets, if you are purchasing humans as commodity, if you are engaging in criminal activity on the streets where people are raising their families, that through this coordination with the Seattle Police Department, the City Attorney's Office, the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, if you're running in our streets, engaging in criminal activity on the streets where people are raising their families, the police are going to arrest you, the attorneys are going to prosecute you, and you're going to be brought to justice because gun violence is preventable. These issues we can solve for, and I was really heartened to see all these levels of government come together.
Yeah.
But we can't lose sight of the fact that this is also occurring in the Central District,
Right.
in Rainier Valley, in Rainier Beach. And so this isn't the end, this is the beginning.
Got it. Just to follow up on that protection order idea, is that going to work? I'm thinking about your capacity issue again. Laws are only as good as their enforcement. Talk to me about this plan with these emergency protection orders and if that's going to work.
I think it could. I don't have a complete answer for you.
It's a pretty novel concept, so
Yes,
we really don't
but
know. Yeah.
To that point, is you look at the problem set and you analyze it. It's like, hey, how do we attack this? How do we address this? And then you look at what we can do. So, for example, we had our overnight premises, or businesses bill that really cut gun violence on the south side because that gun violence between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Yep.
And we look at that. You look at chronic nuisance property, as Councilmember Strauss mentioned, which at one point was not even being used by a city attorney, to my great frustration. But I'm so very happy that City Attorney Evans is using it. So, hey, how can we use that in combination? So if we can use ERPO, if we can use that in combination with other ordinances that can kind of drive a solution here, I'm up for it. It is different, so we'll see.
Okay. Let me take it one step
Brian,
further. Or would you?
May I jump in there? And this is a fun fact you might not know about me. When I worked for Senator David Frocht, I was one of 3 people that worked on the initial bill of the extreme risk protection order. So as Senator Frocht, I worked for him and Adam Hall.
Okay.
And what we have found is that this protection order has saved lives countless times. There are famous people that it has been reported about in the news that have had their lives saved with extreme risk protection orders. It is a really good program, and I think that it will be applicable here because it does 2 things. One, it says if you are a danger to yourself or others, you go through due process to have your firearm rights reviewed.
Yeah.
And if you are engaging in behavior such as sex trafficking and using these weapons to imprison human beings, then that's not something that's going to work for us. And using the due process to ensure that constitutional rights are maintained is the way that we are able to address this situation. And ERPOs are one, and I think it's a great tool.
Okay, we'll see. Yeah.
And to add to this point, again, we'll see, but the DV aspect of domestic violence, you could argue the way the pimps manipulate the women, the girls, that it creates a similar dynamic. And so hopefully, this can be added to the mix and then we can take advantage of it. But we have to implement it and we have to have the follow-up and the follow-through.
Got it. Let's talk about some of the other legislation the council's working on here, including some emergency legislation to allow Seattle's police chief to temporarily shut down streets as a public safety measure. Councilmember Juarez sponsoring this ordinance. I did invite her on the show. She said she couldn't make it. Councilmember Kettle, do you support this idea? What does it mean to give the chief this kind of authority over street closures?
It goes to our overnight premises establishments bill,
right.
And it also goes to chronic nuisance properties. So I support it. One could argue the mayor could just do it herself.
Right.
You don't really need it, but on the ground, chief is working these issues very detailed.
Yeah.
And he can work with
neighborhood by neighborhood type stuff.
Yeah, with the precinct captains, and he has a philosophy of really empowering the precinct captains. And so with that knowledge and then working with SDOT Director Brady, yes, they can take action. And by the way, it's better to do it beforehand, before a bullet goes through a house, and instead of going a couple feet over a bassinet, it could kill somebody.
Yeah, that was a terrible incident that happened in the community. Do you worry at all that it creates a sort of pretext for anybody hanging out in that area could be arrested? I wanted to make sure I asked you that question.
No, I don't. I recognize that, this comes up in different ways for other bills too.
Yeah.
And, we need to be, it's kind of like what we've done with the technology program. We have our mission in terms of what we're trying to do, but then we build in protections. And so you can build in different pieces to ensure that we are focused on what it needs to be focused on and not getting distracted with issues on the side like you're kind of mentioning there.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Councilmember Strauss, just some quick thoughts here on this legislation to allow the chief to shut down streets. Is this kind of ordinance needed? I guess it could be used in Ballard or any neighborhood here. What do you think about it?
I don't know that it's needed, but clarity is always helpful.
Okay, okay. By which you mean you'd like the chief to have that kind of role, or what's your thought there?
In these times and spaces, we've seen different streets already and alleys in Belltown and in downtown already closed for public safety issues, and that's why I don't believe that legislation is needed. And I would say that without that clarity, it creates a gray space. And when you have when you are engaging in the same problem set time and time again, rather than having a case-by-case basis decision, it's good to have clarity, and that's what the bill does. But also, I think that the bill came from a frustration that neighbors were not being heard, and that there was action not being taken swiftly. And so this is adding clarity.
Okay.
It's being very clear that these closures do need to happen.
Okay.
Sets a process
and
for it.
it's best to do it through the chief and with the Director Brady in this case, rather than
From
people
SDOT,
doing things on their own, because you don't know exactly.
And that was happening in that neighborhood. People are setting up their own barriers.
If residents and constituents are doing their own thing, we're in a bad place. And so we need to avoid that. So again, we are similar, but we also see the need for it in clarity and/or the ability to be proactive.
And I'm going to go a step further to say that I have a lot of residents in my district asking for these types of street safety measures in places that gun violence is not occurring. And SDOT routinely tells me that there's not the funding to do it. And so then I ask about the Vision Zero work. Those funds are only allowed to be used on arterials. And I have, maybe not quite in my district, it's still up in D5, but there are folks that put out their own implements to slow traffic down, and I'm feeling like SDOT's not hearing the residents, that they want their residential streets slowed down. So it's beyond just gun violence. I think everyone wants to feel safe on their street, and we have to address the gun violence, but SDOT also needs to be more responsive to everyday residents.
When you look at the public safety surveys that come back, yes, people are concerned about gun violence, but actual just safety for pedestrians up there is off the charts. People are really calling for that. So
teenagers do have driver's licenses.
That true story. I had one, and I was a
Don't
danger
even
on the
bring up
streets, too.
e-mobility scooters.
Okay. Thank you for that. I
Keep
really
us on
appreciate
track.
that. Yeah,
Bob and Dan can get you
a lot of
off
people have
track.
been talking about what's going on Aurora. Councilmember Strauss, back to you for a question about sound transit. Here we go. So the plan to have a light rail extension go to Ballard was put on hold or maybe deferred a few weeks ago. I'm not sure what the right nomenclature is there, but it doesn't sound like light rail is coming to Ballard anytime soon. You serve on the Sound Transit Board. Can you break down what's happening with the Ballard Link extension and what Seattleites can expect, please?
Yeah, several months ago, Sound Transit staff killed the idea of the ability to get to Ballard. They provided 3 options. None of them prioritized ridership, and none of their 3 staff options got to Ballard. What we saw in the chair's package that was voted on, I voted no, is that County Executive Zahalai was successful in getting us the funding to design all the way to Market Street on the Ballard line. That move by Executive Zahalai, with my support and all of us working together, is what is keeping Ballard alive today. So Ballard's not dead yet. It is on life support. We need every viewer to reach out to Sound Transit board members directly and share the importance of getting the extension that provides new ridership opportunities to new riders in the Seattle area. The downtown tunnel is redundant for Seattleites. It is needed by the region. It's a nice to have for Seattle. Ballard and West Seattle are a must-have for Seattleites, and they are a nice to have for the region. And so over the course of the next 6 to 9 months, we'll see a number of decisions that we will need to make, and there's going to be a calendar, and sign up for my newsletter if you want to stay informed. But all this to say, through that design work, we have, and I've heard 2028 or 2032 as the date in which we need to have full funding to stay on track. And so one of the amendments that I put forward and was passed is a transparency measure, says to Sound Transit, you must put out a date for Ballard, no matter what it is or how bad it is. And I'm telling you, their ideas are very bad right now. Like, it's not good. But it's better to be transparent and say, we are working to find cost-cutting measures and funding options. And through that work, we will be able to bring that date closer in time. And that is the transparency that Sound Transit needs to rebuild the trust that they have lost with so many people in our area.
Thank you. Councilmember Kettle, I want you to respond to some online chatter that might be a little too hot for Seattle Channel. Here we go. To be blunt, Sound Transit is out of sync with Seattle. The agency's failure with the Ballard link extension will cause other problems that will ripple into the future. If those fiery words sound familiar, they came from one of your press releases a few weeks ago.
I was going to say, I recognize that.
Yeah, that might have been you. I wanted you to explain your concerns to viewers.
Well, two things. Kind of like the leadership that Councilmember Juarez is showing in North Seattle, nobody can match the leadership and the involvement of Councilmember Strauss on Sound Transit, and particularly related to the Ballard Regional Center. And I have great frustrations with Sound Transit and with the state generally, because the state, on one hand, through Puget Sound Regional Council, the comprehensive plan, we've created a regional center. Sound Transit mission is to connect regional centers. Regional centers are connected except for Ballard. And as I've said many times, land use and transportation are two sides of the same coin. So we are going to create problems with the densification of Ballard without proper transportation links, public transit, between that regional center and the rest of the system. And that's really frustrating to me.
Got it. Councilmember Strauss, we had a question come in from one of our viewers. Eric wants to know this. Former SDOT Director Scott Kubley, that's the Seattle Department of Transportation, has been pitching a Copenhagen-styled automated rail system between West Seattle and Ballard that he says could cut costs by more than half. Why not have Sound Transit study the proposal? Is that solution something the board is looking into? Some thoughts about what's next here, I guess.
We have to look at all of the options. And that was part of the motion that I worked on with Executive Zahalai, saying, and that's one of those key dates over these next 6 to 9 months, is when Sound Transit will engage with these ideas from the community about how do we save money. The DC Metro system is a metro. We have a light rail, technical differences. But when you look at DC Metro, all of the stations are the same. They're not glamorous, and they're super functional.
Yeah.
Sound Transit has a reputation for overbuilding, over-engineering. Seattle stations are not going to be as nice as the Federal Way stations.
Yeah.
And we need to take these ideas from the community, because not getting to Ballard is not an option.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councilmember Kettle, I'm going to jump back to you for another big issue here. The Seattle Police Department recently put out a report that shows the plan to increase hiring at the SPD has run into a complication. Fewer veteran officers are leaving the department, or separating, as it's called, and that's putting a strain on the hiring budget. The report says this: because it is more expensive to retain an existing higher salaried officer than to hire a lower salaried recruit, low separation rates can have an outsized impact on the department's ability to hire recruits and expand its ranks. The report went on to say that the SPD will, if necessary, slow down hiring so it doesn't go past its budget. The city authorized some big raises for SPD last year to make them the highest paid officers in the state. I know that was important to you, and it's important for you to hire more people too. What are your thoughts about this?
What's our mission? What's the priority? If we don't have a safe base in our city, all these other things fall off. And so we have to, build up those numbers. We're supposed to be at 1,400 plus. We're not even, on the ground, we're not even hitting 1,000 yet. And so we have.
When you say 1,400, where's that number come from?
Well, it's come up over the years, from where we used to be traditionally, and also like with Mayor Harold and what we've adopted, as a council in terms of what we're looking at. And so the hard part.
Fewer than 1,000 now. Keep going.
Yes. Yeah. Well, in terms of on the streets, and this goes to other. It's really complicated in the sense of. We've been bringing on, and there's the training piece and getting that really smooth, and there's different pieces to this. But you know what? This is actually, in some ways, a reflection of a good story, because we put in our plan, our strategic framework plan. Pillar 1 was SPD staffing. It had pieces like from the labor, but it had more than that. We had, bills to encourage and for those to stay, and also for people to be brought on. But here's the other thing, too, leadership. The council and city government showed leadership. I had somebody who was retirement eligible. He says, sir, I'm staying because of what you've done.
Okay.
And not just me, my colleagues have gone to the stations, gone to roll calls, and showed that, hey, because anybody wants to be supported.
Yeah.
By their boss and by the the community, and upper management, if you will. And that's what we.
They got a nice raise.
And so, but it's not just that, though.
Okay.
And we have to work through these issues, because at the end of the day, that's what we need. Going back to North Aurora. And it's not just North Aurora. We need bike teams in Belltown. If we really want, we need to be at that 1,400 number.
Okay.
If we really want to address these pieces. And I know it's expensive, but what's the alternative? What's the alternative?
Yeah.
You look at what's happening in business downtown. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So we should not, cut our nose to spite our face.
Got it. Councilmember Strauss, I know this is going to be a hot issue during the budget deliberations that come up this fall. The mayor's asking departments across the city to prepare for 5 to 10% reductions. Will the SPD be getting cut? I know some people are going to be asking that too.
All departments are being asked to go through this exercise. It's a common exercise that every mayor has engaged in. It is an exercise. Their budget isn't built until August. What I said directly to the chief of police, do not slow down on hiring. Do not. If you are having to make decisions now because of this exercise, you must keep hiring. And
Even if it pushes them past their hiring budget.
we have to keep hiring new officers.
Yes.
If we want to be effective in North Aurora, if we want to be effective in Rainier Beach and Rainier Valley, if we want to be effective in the Ballard industrial area where we're seeing organized criminal activity, this is what it takes. And we know that the newer officers that are coming on, we are now the highest paid police department in the state, which means that we are recruiting good officers. If we want the future of policing to be what we want it to be, we have to hire these new officers, and we can't slow down because that timeline is so protracted.
Got it. I want to touch on something else that's happening in the city. The mayor's plan to increase the amount of enhanced shelter units in Seattle. These are units that not only offer tiny homes, but pretty intense human services, too. Councilmember Strauss, you were at an event a few weeks ago celebrating the opening of such a facility, brought up an example for Ballard, from Ballard, I should say, where you had a pilot program in 2023. I thought this was very interesting when you spoke about this. It got people off the street, I should say, but a number of those people failed out, as you put it, because they needed more care. I wanted to take it next level. Are you confident this new enhanced shelter program that's getting rolled out here is going to do a better job than what you saw in your district 3 years ago?
Let me add some nuance to what you just said. We had a list of 38 people.
That's right.
We couldn't find one, so we had 37 people that we got into shelter. Of those, all but 3 got this enhanced type of shelter. For those that went into the enhanced shelter, they stayed in shelter and were successful at stabilizing and addressing some of their issues. For the 3 people that we didn't have room for at the enhanced shelter, they went to a tiny home that had a front desk clerk.
I see.
That had somebody managing the space, but not much more. And those 3 people failed out.
I see. Okay.
And so what I was saying, I don't need any more tiny homes with front desk clerks. When you look at the data of how many shelter beds we have online in that area in that part of the spectrum compared to the enhanced shelter, it explains why people who are just down and out on their luck, we have been effective at getting them inside because they are in these tiny homes.
Yep.
For the people who need enhanced services, they are the ones that are still left on the streets because we are not providing a place for them to get off the streets to because they require a higher level of care.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kettle, we're getting close to wrapping up here, but I do want to talk about this. This is a shelter that's in your district. How is it going with this? Your thoughts about where this is going to go in the future?
Right, in disputed territory.
Okay, all right. And just so you know, here we go.
Yes, in Inner Bay. And, I support it in the sense that we have to build the capacity again, have this option and to learn the lessons learned, like with the Salmon Bay Village just up the road near Ballard Bridge, which was a combination RV and tiny home,
right,
where they put in all these pieces regarding security, outreach to community. We have a process right now with the council regarding neighborhood engagement and mitigation plans. So these service providers have a baseline in terms of what they need to be doing with their neighborhoods and the engagement and the mitigation, which is important. And so a lot of those have been built into the Armory Array location, at the shelter location. It's a little different. It's not a tiny home. And so we'll see. But part of it is, to Councilmember Strauss's point, you have to have this combination. And, and by the way, we have to have a combination across the board. This morning, I was at the Matt Talbert Center, which is a sober living option. So we need more sober living options to go with the other options that we have. Okay. And by having this, that really sets up success for the next stage, going to what Councilmember Strauss was saying.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all the time we have for now. A big thanks to Councilmember Kettle, Councilmember Strauss. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Callanan. We'll see you next time on Council Edition here on the Seattle Channel.